I would like to introduce Debbie Selsavage. She's already helping me. I have a member of a Bible study that I'm in that has Alzheimer's, and she's giving me direction on what I should do. And I had no clue because I don't know anything about this. And that's, she's going to tell us everything you want to know. Debbie, please help me.
Please help us, that's it. I saw a few people coming in. As Barry said, thank you very much for having me here. I know as I was going around, a few people were going, dementia and guns. Unfortunately, and I know this is probably driving Larry nuts with me moving all around like this and the camera's over here. Okay, dementia and guns doesn't go well together. Now, I am not here to tell you what to do with your guns, but there's a book up here that I said to Barry that I will leave for you. This book was published several years ago by my partner and I, Coping with Dementia. And it now is being distributed and has been for the last 4 or 5 years to deputies. As I do crisis intervention training, this is not to take guns away. It's also been endorsed by the American Rifle Association and NRA for the information in here. Now, the foreword is a true story, and I was just telling Barry about this. My partner was growing up in Oklahoma, and there was a cranky old man that was there. Called his name Mr. Flaherty. Well, Mr. Flaherty, they didn't realize had dementia, but he was a cranky old man. His son Bill was out one night, came back late. Mr. Flaherty was at the top of the stairs and said, "Who's there?" He had a gun, and he said, "Dad, it's your son Bill." He said, "The hell it is," and shot him. Now, Bill did have dementia, Mr. Flaherty, and in his mind, his son never should have been out late at night. His son was younger and should have been in bed or in a crib, for that matter. His son didn't die. His son got shot in the shoulder. Now, as kids growing up, all of them mimicked and played out that whole scenario and thought it was a joke. What we found out later on is Mr. Flaherty had dementia. Now, how does dementia fit with firearms? Not very well. Now, most people that we know that have dementia that have a firearm know that it's for safety and for hunting, correct? Primarily. So we all think of dementia as what is a symptom of a dementia?
Paranoia.
What?
Paranoia.
Paranoia? Okay, what's another symptom most commonly?
Forgetfulness.
Forgetfulness. Most often it's what type of forgetfulness? Short-term memory. So what if my husband, Ed, has dementia and I walk outside and say, "Hey, I'm going over to see Susie. I'll be back in 5 minutes." Is that a short-term memory that I'm asking him to remember?
Yeah.
Guess what he doesn't remember?
You
That I left the house to go see Susie. He doesn't want to shoot me. He was protecting the house because Susie was in the house, correct? Mm-hmm. So the other thing that is very effective with dementia and the combination. So I will tell you that 100 books of these were delivered after a summit that we did in Citrus County with our sheriff, Marion County deputies, and the Ocala Police Department. We delivered more than 100 after that conference in November because they were going to start delivering up the 200 corridor because there was such an issue with this. Now, what is another symptom that somebody might think of with dementia? We've mentioned paranoia, which is
Wandering.
wandering. Okay, so another incident that I got was in a subdivision. A gentleman came with his holster on and went into the gym and got on the treadmill. Is that a problem?
Yeah.
Kinda. They're not doing anything wrong, but their short-term memory is a problem with them understanding safety awareness. So what's another symptom of dementia?
Agitation.
What?
Agitation.
It can be agitation. And that agitation comes by me. I piss you off with what I might do without you knowing what I'm going to do. Correct? So agitation is not necessarily a symptom of dementia. It's caused by the people that are caring for the person, because we don't know what's making them mad. So we have some symptoms that are, and I do have, if anybody is interested in a e-newsletter, I think Barry said you received a newsletter. It doesn't get sold. It's just a newsletter on dementia, where we'll be, what we're doing. If you would like to get that, this is a sign-up sheet. So another symptom is we have short-term memory loss. We have paranoia. We also have skill and dexterity that I no longer have control over. What do you use in everything you do? These 3 fingers. I will lose the ability to have the skill and dexterity that I need to use these 3 fingers. Now, in our world, it's as simple as zipping up pants, buckles, tying shoes, buttons. I will no longer be able to do that. But what I do have, these 2 fingers on my hand are the strength. That's what makes me grip. So I have uncontrollable strength with no skill. Not a great combination. I will develop neuropathy. I won't have any hunger or thirst. This lady said we'll wander. Wandering is 70% of our folks that are going to have a dementia, 70% will wander. And my husband Albert was one of those. We lived on the Inverness Golf and Country Club, very busy road, and 3 times. If your person wanders around the neighborhoods, they're repeat offenders. They'll do it again. It happened that my deputies in Citrus County brought him back 3 times. But each time he was further and further away. The 3rd time he was close to a mile on the main road. I had to place him at that time. So we have neuropathy. We have no hunger, thirst. We're dehydrated. There's a lot of symptoms and side effects of dementia that a lot of us don't realize, and it affects every single sense that you have. Your hunger, your thirst, your skill, your strength, neuropathy. I'm not going to eat the same way. Does anybody know what the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia is? Has anybody here been exposed or had somebody relative with dementia?
Yeah.
How many of you in this area here have neighbors that you might know of? A few? So what happens in that situation with us in Florida, and I do a lot of work in the villages, but what happens in Florida is that what do we do when we move to Florida? We get away from our kids. So what most people don't have is family. Most people don't have someone responsible to manage medications, manage their driving, manage anything. So what does that fall on? Falls on neighbors. And that's kind of what our call was. Barry didn't know who the friends or the neighbors or the family was. So we have to go around and through a back door to figure that out. So most of the time when our neighbors are dealing with this, they get into situations that are really kind of dangerous, like seeing your person leave in a car. So we talk about guns, quote, as being a weapon to someone in dementia, in the journey of dementia. How about a car? How about knives? All of those other things. When I lose my safety awareness, I have no idea what I'm doing. Excuse me?
No, I know my friend's lost a lot. I drive her around. She's my best friend.
Correct.
She doesn't remember, and she had a lot of hate at first about it.
Absolutely. If I go up to this gentleman and say, hey, Dad, let's say it's Dad, and I say, hey, Dad, I've noticed some changes, and I'm going to take your keys.
Yeah, forget it. That goes back to gun
You'd probably pull that gun on me, all right? But that's the first thing we think of, is taking something away from someone. We're not children. And I'm not going to go up to him and say, hey, but that's the first thing we do. The first thing I bet when anybody walked in this door and said we were going to talk about dementia is they're going to take my goddamn guns away. That's not what I'm about. What I might do is, hey, Dad, I noticed, and if I was even a third party, I might be saying, hey, Dad, I noticed that some things are changing, and I really like that gun you have, that special one with the pearl handle one thing. Could you show me that?
Not right now.
Really? So what I want to do is get him convinced that I would really like that now, so you could teach me how to use it and
On your
maintenance
side,
it. Much different than saying, I'm going to take that away from you and unload it. So the same thing with the vehicle. Do you know that AARP came out with a survey? What's the most feared thing among seniors? Huh?
All right.
My wife.
Mobility and independence. It wasn't even a disease. Number 2 was Alzheimer's and dementia. So if I take his keys, he's going to become pretty gosh darn obsessed with that car, isn't he? Because what most families do is we take the keys and leave the car for them to look at. No, that happens. So now what I have to do is figure out, what is your need for the vehicle? Where does he go? And I have to be a step ahead of saying, hey, I'm going down to the store, and I hate going to the grocery store. Would you come with me? Mm-hmm. Bingo, that's one less place he may not use the vehicle. And after a while, the need for the vehicle is removed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
We're not children. So the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia is simply what we've been talking about. Dementia is an umbrella term of symptoms. It's technically not even a disease. It is symptoms of dementia are symptoms. So it could be wayfinding, getting lost, going to familiar places. How many times have we seen silver alerts out there? Those are people still driving. And as simply as taking a left instead of a right, I could be going to Miami or I could be going to Gainesville, correct?
Yeah.
And what will happen to me with dementia is I will not stop until I find something familiar.
Or hit it.
Well, run out of gas primarily. And then sometimes we can find them as they've used their card, if they can. But primarily, I will not be able to stop until I see something familiar. And what won't I ever see?
Something
familiar. So that's why we see them 4 and 5 hours away. A tank of gas, I guess I should say.
I brought her to the doctor, and he was the one that informed her. And then she decided that she could drive her golf cart, and I'm just her friend. She ran into a friend of ours on a golf cart.
Yes.
So I went to call the doctor and had him tell her that she can no longer, because she may hurt someone.
This is what she's saying is instead of the vehicle, they gave her a golf cart. This is no lie. I do, like I said, do a lot of work in the villages, and somebody stood up and said, hey, I got rid of my mom's car and I moved her to the villages, and we took her right to the golf cart store and bought her a golf cart.
Yeah, no.
There are gas-powered golf carts in the villages. They clip along. I mean, they're going 40 miles an hour right with you. So, no solution there. Doctors will also tell you that as long as you drive 5 miles within your home, you're okay. It's a statistic that most accidents happen within 5 miles from your home. So that's not a solution, that's a cop-out.
Yeah.
But those are hard conversations that we don't want to have. Taking something away is not what we want to do.
No.
I had a lady that she wanted her car, and she drove an older Cadillac, and them sons of guns had to be 20 feet long. And she always clipped the side view mirrors off them. And so it was in the garage, it was in the shop. They were trying to find parts, and she was absolutely fixated on this car. She was 96 years old. I mean, she talked about putting the black line up the back of her leg for her pantyhose, because she was one of those that was working when she was when there was a silk shortage in the war. And you didn't go to Sunday school without putting, or Sunday church without putting that line up. And so I said to her, "Are you driving that red car down at J&J's?" Because I had gone in there, the family was at their wits' end. I said, "Is that car that's down at JJ's Automotive?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "My gosh, I go there too." And I said, "I heard Jay talking about," now I don't know Jay. I don't have, but I said, "I heard Jay talking that car is a little bit older. Am I sure?" She said, "Yeah, it's 20 years old." I said, "Yeah, I heard him talking that they were having a hard time finding the parts. They're still working on it, and they're having a hard time finding the parts." I said, "I have to go pick my car up. You want me to check on it?" She said, "Would you?" I said, "Absolutely." She didn't talk about the car again, because I validated that her concern was, where's my car?
Very smart.
She was fine. And then she started talking about this sign, and I was like, how do you do that? How do you get it straight? And pretty soon you couldn't shut her up. So we have wayfinding, getting lost, going to familiar places. We do have short-term memory. We also have the loss of hunger and thirst. We have neuropathy. We have comprehension. So if I'm standing behind someone and talking to them, there's a good chance that they absolutely will not hear me. But what is most impressive about what they're losing, and very powerful, is what did Larry start to mention to you when you were going through those 4 steps? It was always about looking side to side, wasn't it? Well, what happens to a person living with dementia is they lose their peripheral vision. So how far can they look side to side or up and down? Yeah. They have a box on their head. This is why we try to talk to families about understanding about driving. Most often the accidents are T-bones. So what caregivers are saying is, the doctor said we only can drive 5 miles as long as I'm with him. And I'm going, well, hell, why do you want to be with him? The biggest accident is a T-bone that's coming right through your door. Or someone else's, correct. Now, some of the things that we don't understand is that it's an expensive disease. Going into assisted living, let's start with the steps. Going in and having in-home care is going to be about $32 an hour. Yeah. Going into assisted living is going to run you anywhere from probably about $4,000 to $7,000 a month, cash. Not a lot of Medicaid acceptance. If you're in a nursing home, it's anywhere from about $11,000 to $13,000 a month. So that's a huge expense. So most of our caregivers are petrified of saving money. Now what you just said about getting into an accident, the minute somebody finds out that this person can't figure out how to find their license or their insurance, we got the most attorneys per capita in Florida. Where do you think they're going?
Yeah.
Van Heulen.
Morgan and Morgan, I guess. But they're going to find out what is wrong, and all that time and money that you're saving, they can come after your house. Because now my car's going to be fixed, correct? My car's going to be fixed, but I may have other issues. So we're really careful about that. So on the umbrella, those are symptoms. And the biggest thing is no safety awareness. I have no safety awareness of what's going on. I had a call from a caregiver. She did not know anything about guns, but her husband had his gun by the bed table, loaded every single day. And what he did every single morning was check it, open it up and check it. So we helped her do some different things with that, not to remove the gun because she didn't want to put it in a safe and have him look for it. We found other ways of helping her, and it was successful. And then that gun shop decided to teach her. So she went through classes to learn and be much more comfortable with that. Underneath that umbrella of symptoms and of dementia is actually the disease of Alzheimer's. Number one in probably the diagnosis by about 75 or 80%. And there's no way of diagnosing an Alzheimer's while we're alive. No, you need scanning that we don't have. Usually done by an amyloid PET scan that is done in research. Mm-hmm. If you do a PET scan in the real world, what's that usually detecting? Cancer. They're not going to determine dementia or Alzheimer's. So we don't have the scanning for that. But what is our doctor's condition to? We have symptoms, we want a diagnosis, and what do we want when we leave?
Medication.
Correct. So when they tell you you have an Alzheimer's, we can give you a pill that does nothing, that doesn't slow it down. But that's how we work. Underneath this umbrella right now, from research, there's more than 120 different types and forms of dementias. So we may not ever know what kind of dementia you have. This gentleman mentioned agitation. We think of combativeness, aggressiveness. What is happening with dementia is your left side of the brain, it's real easy. Your left side of your brain is what you lose. The right side of your brain is what you retain. R and left, okay? Left is lost, right is retained. The left side of our brain is where we have our language. The idle chit-chat like we're doing now. Hey, how you doing? God, that's a great looking hat you got there. Blah, 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 right? Now when I start to have problems, it's going to sound something like, well, hey, can I have that thing that you had, that the whatchamacallit thing? Now some of you might be saying, oh shit, I got that. I got dementia. You can hear people, when they sit up front, they go, oh shit, I do that. No, that doesn't mean you have dementia. But it's some of those things, because in the left side of my brain, that's where my words are coming, but that's also the processing and the growing of a sentence. I can't do that any longer, so I go to the, what's that, the thing?
Oh, you know.
Yeah, you know, right. It's the perpetual charade game is what it is.
Oh, you know what I'm talking
Now,
about.
the aggressiveness that it may be thought of as aggressiveness might be, well, goddamn shit, give me that thing.
Frustration.
Correct. Because what's over in the right side of my brain is bad language, swear words, racial, ethnic, everything.
Sounds like a Navy side.
Swear like a sailor. Right. My husband Albert was 20 years in the Navy and 19 and a half in a submarine. That would make anybody go crazy, but he absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. But what his go-to word was, because he had a concussion on his left side, so his language skills left early, it was the F-bomb. That becomes a really not acceptable in the world. Shit does, but not the other stuff. Are you going to be able to put this on video? But this is what will be perceived as aggressive. That's not aggressive. That's my own frustration because I can't get you to understand what I need to say. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So after 120 plus types of dementias, we may not ever know. But you'll be able to know. You'll be able to see the signs. All of you, I bet, are creatures of habit. Are you not?
Yeah.
You're not unique. You're a creature of habit. I bet every month when you come to this club, you sit in that chair.
You're wrong.
He sits in this.
Okay, you sit at that table. Let me say
That's
that.
a different table, too.
Okay. Most often, is everybody sitting in a place that we normally sit at?
Usually.
Well, you're new. You're not going to sit at the same table. Oh, you're not new. They're new. Okay. Most often, we are creatures of habit. Now, what you have to look for is when that routine starts to change. Because
like
we
putting-
are creatures of habit.
You mean like putting the same shoe on first every time?
Correct. Or right and left.
Yeah, I mean, it's the
Correct.
same one. Right.
Shirts inside out.
Oh, he's,
He still puts the black line down his leg.
So we know, okay, we're not gonna say.
thanks, buddy.
Does that make sense? So and another thing, I just mentioned that a person with dementia looks for something familiar. They can't come backwards. What makes Florida and subdivisions like this dangerous to them is there's water everywhere.
Yeah.
Now, you might not have a large body of water like a lake or a creek, but you have golf courses, don't you?
And alligators.
And alligators. So what will happen to our folks with dementia is I will walk into the water and I think it's ankle deep and I'll continue to go. I don't have the ability to turn around. And I will continue to go. Going into a forest or under branches, I will go, but I can't come out. Now, one of my friends, my care partners, lived on the water, and I met someone the other day right on Wikiwashi. I mean, their patio was, and this person feeds the alligators. I know, this is just, why do we do this? But her husband had dementia in a neighborhood that had a lot of seasonal people that hadn't left yet. She was diabetic and had a diabetic attack and passed out. Her husband went looking for her in the water. Got to the water's edge, and it happened to be the neighbors were still here, looked out, and said, "Oh my God, Mike's in the water." But he was stuck in the water. It was mucky. The neighbor went out, he got stuck. This is a place that they feed the gators, and now we're getting, the third person came out. It took about 4 people to get all of them out of the water before the gators got there. So you're exactly right. If the water doesn't drown us, we're lucky if something else doesn't get us. This is the lack of safety that they are now experiencing. We will experience a lot of empathy. So if I'm a caregiver or a spouse, you could be doing wonderful things for me, but I'll never say thank you. Or I won't have the same empathy for you. I won't have any understanding of that. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So with some of the things that we're talking about, dementia and firearms, dementia and vehicles, dementia and medication, dementia and alcohol. It's not just one thing. It's a combination of all that is going to be far worse, and the signs and symptoms are going to be far worse. Had an 86-year-old man that was a caregiver for his wife, and the neighbors took care of her because she wandered. And I was getting calls from the neighbors. He was an alcoholic. What was happening is he was drinking and passing out. And she was getting out of the house. She was 86 years old. But he was giving her alcohol to slow her down. And it never worked. So the neighbors kept calling. I did what we did with Barry, is say we need to start getting the deputies involved. He had already had 1 DUI, and he had already had a domestic. So we started calling the sheriffs, and they could see this problem, but we have a very bad system for adult protective services and DCF and all of that. It's not a very effective, but we kept doing it. I told the neighbors, let's just keep calling. The deputies came over, and finally, he needed some more alcohol. And when one of the neighbors was coming in, a deputy had stopped him at the gate. He was then arrested for 15 days. She's now all alone. So deputies said, keep calling. And finally, Adult Protective Services took her to an assisted living. When he got out, he brought her back home. I have then heard since from the neighbors that he was arrested for 3 months and took his license away. These are tragedies that happen during the course that all of us as a community are dealing with. So dementia, people will ask me, why is it getting so big? Who's just retired? The baby boomers! Baby boomers are the largest generation we've ever had. Now, Alzheimer's and forms of dementia is still only going to affect 10% of our population. So 1 out of 10, so you can do a count. 1 out of 10. Yeah, just don't count.
Yeah.
1 out of 10.
I'm not counting myself.
You're going to count yourself first.
No,
in that
I'm not
1
gonna
10,
count
right?
myself at all.
1 out of 10, but what's happening now is the baby boom has now increased that 10%. In the state of Florida right now, it has been noted just on Alzheimer's, that's not dementias, 580,000 right now are living with a form of Alzheimer's. So we figure that right now there's more than 1 million people in Florida that are living with a form of dementia.
Most of them don't run.
Huh?
I'd say most of them are don't run.
A lot of them are in this room.
Well,
But you're not counting yourself.
correct.
Myself.
In Citrus County, where I'm from, that was the second oldest county in the state of Florida. The average state, or the average over 65 percentage is 17% in the state. So Citrus County was 37% over 65. Sumter County, villages, is about 68%. And now they're growing even more. Lake County is going to have some problems, so they have a really huge issue with it. I'm not making light of it, but what I will tell you to do is if there is someone, please keep my card handy. I can help you find resources or kind of help you with some understanding of what's happening or try and talk to the family. This gentleman that now just got arrested again, before he was arrested for the first time, the deputies in Citrus County will call me. They don't want to Baker Act our folks. And does anybody know what the Baker Act is? The Baker Act is usually used for mental health. If you're a danger to yourself or to someone else, the deputies or the doctors have a right to involuntarily incarcerating you in a mental situation, in a psych unit, up to 72 hours, and you can't see your person. And this happened twice to my husband in a memory care community, from a memory care community. They Baker Acted him with no understanding, and when I got there, he was already handcuffed. And he had dementia, and he spent a lot of time in this situation. What we're trying to do is not do that. So the deputies do call me to see if I can help with resources, and they said, I think he's ready to talk to you. That man was no more ready to talk to me than Santa Claus. And still, even now, the neighbors have asked him to call me, and he will not. Because the first thing that he said was, they're going to make me do something, and I don't want to do it. I'm not here to tell you what to do with your guns. I'm not here to tell you what you do with dementia. I'm here to tell you that I'm here as a resource. And I will try and do whatever I can to work with the deputies and your families to help you find the best solution. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
You mentioned that this is a fatal disease. How does this evolve to a fatality?
So you won't pass away. So his question is it says here that it's terminal. So the definition of a dementia is that 2 parts of my brain is actively dying. It's terminal, progressive, and degenerate. You will not pass away from the Alzheimer's or form of dementia. You will pass away from the complications of it. The main organ in your whole body is what tells you to breathe, swallow, walk, all this stuff. So what will happen is you won't be able to process the food the same way, and swallowing usually is one of the first signs. But you will eventually your body will just not work anymore. There'll be something. So what is happening is, when I say your brain, our brains, there's not anybody 25 here, right? Okay, yeah. I know, that's a joke, really. Anyways, at 25, our brain is not even fully formed till 25. So does that answer why our teenagers are so stupid? Their front temporal part of their brain isn't even formed till 25. And that's 3 pounds. Our brain fills our skull, and it's usually 3 pounds. Now, some of you think you're smarter and it's much bigger, but at the end of this process, your brain will be 1 pound. So what's happening is a synapses and the connections are not working.
She complains all the time that she has a headache right here. And she wanted me to ask you, is that a normal symptom?
People will tell you that I don't know what's going on. My brain feels foggy. I don't know what's happening. Why can't I? So all these types of things that are happening, depending on where things are happening, yeah.
Okay.
You know, a person, now let me ask you another question. Do any of you think that a person living with dementia is aware?
No.
No, they don't realize all.
Absolutely, 100% they are aware.
Heck yeah.
Now, if you can't, imagine if you can't drive anymore. Do you not think something is wrong? Imagine someone's there all the time. You absolutely know that something is wrong. Will I admit that I have a dementia?
No.
Do I care that you admit that you have a dementia? No. Because the only person that needs to change is the person that's helping me.
Well, that's a qualified yes. Late stage dementia, you're going to lose your sense of awareness. You won't have the insight anymore.
You may not, but I will tell you. So you're saying late stages. You hear I've never mentioned a stage, correct?
Right.
I've mentioned a journey. Because this journey can be 8 to 12 years. So I don't care where you are. It's a journey. Now, late stage, they're still aware. And it's really primarily through music. Music is the last thing that will go. Rhythm, your hearing, they're aware.
Uh-oh.
They're aware. You don't have hearing. No. So did that answer your question, that it is terminal and this is what will happen? Most people don't want to hear the A or the D word. So I'll have families come to me and say, yeah, they don't want to know that they have it. Their doctor told them they had white matter disease. So what you will see is when your brain starts to shrink, what they'll look for is atrophy. Atrophy is that the part of the brain is dying, correct?
Right.
What they'll look for is the shrinkage in your brain that's more than normal for your age. It's all pretty not scientific. So what will happen is now that your brain is shrinking, there's more space between your brain and your skull, correct? That's going to be described as white or gray matter. So if somebody says to you, if the doctor says you have white or gray matter, I'm really sorry, you have a dementia. You can hide it all you want. I don't care about saying the word. So whenever I do workshops in Marion County Libraries, I do workshops in Citrus County Library, I do workshops all over the place. I have people that are living with dementia there. I do conferences, workshops, everything, support groups. The person living with dementia is invited. They never leave because I don't want to humiliate them. They didn't cause this. The family didn't cause this. It's something that has happened. Usually, we can go back 4 or 5 or more years because most people are in the journey 4 or 5 years before they decide to go get a diagnosis. But normally, we still don't. With 120 types of diseases, we still don't know what's causing it. What I can tell you is a traumatic fall, as my husband had, was a head injury and surgeries. So all of us that are in line for hip surgery or knee surgery, the anesthesia is definitely something that we will see significant changes in the journey if I've already been diagnosed, or it will start the symptoms. Does that make sense? So how do we solve that?
Stay healthy.
Don't fall, right? How we can solve that is now we have to train the doctors to listen to us. And now we have to tell them, if we have a surgery, I want local anesthetic. The kind that we do for colonoscopy and dental surgery, and you may not ever see a change in that person. So we can start insisting that they start using. So for instance, one of my care partners, her husband had to get a pacemaker. First thing they said was they're going to put him out. I said, see if they'll do something else. So then they just numbed the area and gave him a sedation. He was fine. He already had dementia, but he did not progress. Another question.
I have one. He said that the doctors will give you a pill that doesn't do any good. Why would they give you a pill knowing that it doesn't do any good?
So he's asking about the pill.
Exactly.
How do they get paid? Now, I will tell you that Alzheimer's, underneath that umbrella, 75% that go there and get a diagnosis will have an Alzheimer's. Vascular dementia is based on strokes, heart attacks, your vascular system, any kind of falls, alcohol. That's only about 20%. So we kind of say maybe the doctor was given a code to build the insurance for a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So what he's asking about is the medication. I say that the medication does nothing because what we're expecting it to do and what the doctor tells us it's doing is slowing down the disease process. It cannot do that. What it does do is if you have a person like you were mentioning that is kind of hard to manage, maybe a little bit aggressive, or I need help having to manage him. The medications are behavior management. Sometimes we can give them the medication and that behavior will calm down a bit. That's only for us, really, basically. It's not for them. And in some cases, please don't take this the wrong way. If I'm having a really hard time with my person, do you really want to slow that down? They're in agony. This is terrible. So the medication is used to manage behaviors. So, say this person right here, Bob.
He's already on it.
Say Bob is a type A personality. He's been in management his whole life. There has to be a role that your person that's with you is a little bit more compliant, easygoing, correct? Because that's how we work. Now, if he's a type A personality, you're going to need help. The medication might calm Bob down enough so that I'll be able to help manage him. But it won't do anything to change the destruction in my brain. That will still continue. The medication was never designed for Alzheimer's and dementia. It was designed for bipolar and schizophrenia. So these are psychotropic drugs they're giving you. That's a pretty dangerous kind of drug that they're giving you. And sometimes we have to get anxiety pills. Sometimes we have to be, caregivers have to be on them. So they give it to them because that's the way our medicine is predictable. I go in with symptoms, I get a diagnosis, and I walk out with a pill. And then they say, come back in 6 months. You can't do that with dementia.
What happens to people that can't afford to be put into someplace?
He's asking about what happens when we can't afford to go into an assisted living. An assisted, there's several different levels. But normally when you are going into a nursing environment or you can't afford it, you will be going into a nursing home environment. That would be in the medical world skilled, or your rehabs, you would get on Medicaid. Now, the first thing that you should do is once you find out that there's someone that has a dementia, go see an attorney. Because now when I mention Medicaid, everybody's saying, now I got to spend all my money. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Somebody will say to me, you have a 5-year look back. Absolutely not. You have a 5-year look back. So, okay, let's say dad over here decides he's going to have to go into a nursing home, but he's going to give his daughter $10,000. I think it's now up to $18,000 now that you can give someone, but say $10,000, okay? And he does that for 5 years to get his money down so that he can get Medicaid, right? That's how we think. What's going to happen is we're going to apply dad for Medicaid, and they're going to see that they gifted $50,000 away. They're not going to disqualify you. They're going to make you pay $50,000 to the nursing home before they start to get him on Medicaid.
Oh, crap.
Correct. So if you go to an attorney, they can protect assets that will no longer be counted towards a Medicaid application. So what I'm saying is you do not become broke, because primarily the care person, the care partner, is going to outlive you. And they won't count your house or vehicle. And if she's left or he's left with nothing to pay for the house or the vehicle, then what good was that? That answer your question?
What do you ask the attorney for?
You ask the attorney for estate planning. In Ocala, you have an elder law attorney, Sharon Mulkey, right here on Silver Springs Boulevard. And she is elder law, she's Medicaid planning. So let's say I have long-term care insurance. So Medicaid planning comes from, I'm going to protect those assets. So say I have to go into a long-term care. I'm going to use my finances to the best of my ability, but I'm going to have long-term care. What she might do, or what an attorney is going to do, is to protect your assets so that when and if you go through your long-term care, or you go through whatever money you've placed for that care, you will go right into Medicaid because they have protected assets. Does that make sense?
So that means your spouse could stay in the house?
Absolutely. It is not a countable asset, but if I can't pay for it once you're gone, what good is it?
Exactly.
So you don't have to sell your house. You don't have to do that. So you must go. So it's a whole package. You get legal. How many people have power of attorney? Right. So what comes with that is power of attorney, healthcare surrogacy, living will, and will. That should be a package that you get. In the state of Florida, if you don't have that, you'll be a ward of the state, and you'll go into guardianship. And they have what's called professional guardians that will do everything and take it out of the estate. You will lose all control. And it will be very expensive because who they've been appointed by is an attorney in the court. Who gets paid?
The attorney.
Right. So if you're in a situation, or if you have done a power of attorney before 2011, it's really time to have them relooked again. Because elder law has changed, and if you are still snowbirds, if there's somebody that can do elder law in both places so it's applicable, is even better, because we have very different rules. Some people that I've talked to have always wanted to retire up north, but when they found out how much they can have protected in Florida, they've decided to stay in Florida. We have much more protection for our finances here than anywhere else. So there is, if anybody's interested, I'm not sure if I have it on this sheet, but there is a elder law network that you can, attorneys that you can look for online. Otherwise, just give me a buzz and I can send you some elder attorneys. But that's really basically to have somebody look at what you have and protect as much as you want. Now, you don't necessarily have to protect it for all the kids to get it if it means you're, going to do this, but just, you need to talk to an attorney. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Now, along those lines, what about a trust? If a trust was established,
There's certain reasons for trust. A lot of people put the trust and then they put their houses right in the trust. They put, there's also something, if there's something that can't be protected, Maybe it's a 401k or a 457B or whatever it might be. That's when a lot of the times the attorneys might say to you, put a new roof on the house or buy a new car. They want you to spend that money down because they can't protect it. They'll spend that money down on things that will benefit you to stay in that house versus having it go towards. So there's many different tools. You've mentioned a trust, we've mentioned all kinds of things. There's many different things, and I'm not an attorney, I'm not a doctor, but you really need to get a hold of someone to ask those specific questions because everybody's financial terms are very different. Where the money is coming from and where you want it to go. And that can all be done by them. But you have to look for someone that is Medicaid planning as part of their, and usually a board certified or elder law does have that. Yes, sir.
No, same thing, my neighbor just went through that last week. Her daughter, husband is a lawyer, and they put all her stuff in a trust.
However is the best way to do it right. And they can't be the owner of the trust.
No.
So, right. So there's all kinds of ways of doing it. Florida just has that. There's no reason that you should have to pay $13,000 for care. There's just no reason for it. Another question? Yes, ma'am.
When you say that dementia is associated with neuropathy, are you just talking about neuropathy in the hand?
Usually their neuropathy, now we're just talking about forms of dementia. She's asking about neuropathy. Neuropathy comes with other illnesses like diabetes, comes with Parkinson's, and Parkinson's has got a real close risk connection to a Lewy body dementia. What we usually see in our folks with dementia is it's in the feet. So what you will see in the beginning when I start to lose my peripheral vision, you'll see a lot of our folks falling more. They lose their depth perception, so they don't know things are flat surfaced or they're steps. Towards the latter part of the journey, you'll see them develop more neuropathy and they'll start to shift. And what they'll do is they're trying to balance on the balls of their feet. What's the matter? Am I giving you all the signs here?
No, we're not doing that. We just fell to somebody.
So you're just doing it because what? You're old or what?
It reminded us of somebody.
So what's happening is I have neuropathy in the feet, and the only place that I don't have it is in the balls of my feet. So you'll see the gait change, and I'll start to shuffle. I won't lift up my heels. Neuropathy in the hand could be from other things. I'm just talking, so what I'm saying is if you have comorbidities like arthritis, if you have comorbidities like diabetes, Parkinson's, dementia makes all of them worse. Because the paranoid that comes into this is if I have all these comorbidities and my husband is giving me pills, what do I think he's doing? He's poisoning me. So dementia makes everything worse. So it is really primarily in the balls of their feet, which changes their gait, which is another thing, is everything is a cause and effect. If I'm doing this, what's the first thing that people tell you to do when you're walking with a walker? What I need to do is see the floor. Because what do I don't want to do?
Fall.
So everybody tells me to stand up, and they get mad at me, but I need to see the floor. And then what happens is my person will pull my walker or pull my hands, and I'm pulling away. Because I need to see what? We do everything wrong. I am certified in the positive approach to care, and that does everything very different. I'm an administrator, certified dementia practitioner. We do everything wrong. And that's even more frustrating. That's where the hitting and all of the stuff comes from, because we're doing one thing and they're doing another. But primarily it's the feet. Unless they have a comorbidity that is going to have. So if I have heart problems, that's going to be swelling of the feet or other things added to dementia.
You described everything I got.
But you're doing okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
They say that memory is the second thing to go. I don't remember what the first was.
You know, and there was somebody that said to me, well, I'm 85, so I'm out of the woods. I'm really sorry, that's not true. Everybody says that this is age related. This isn't age related. I have several people that are in their late 50s that are dealing with this. How it is age related is, guess what? We're living longer. It gives you all an opportunity to experience a form of dementia.
Oh boy.
But not everybody does.
We have known two young men who passed recently from, they called it early onset, but they were in their 40s.
Right.
And they're both deceased now.
Usually we see, and it's unusual, I have a friend that was diagnosed at 59. Now, she was a creature of habit. Her and her husband came down from New Jersey. They went to Lakeland. She'd worked for Walmart for 20 years, got a job in Lakeland at Walmart, and they fired her because she was untrainable. Her husband was like, this doesn't make sense. That's when they went to Shands and found out that she had a form of dementia. She was 59. She's 71. That's really unusual. Usually the earlier they are, it kind of progresses pretty fast. The detriment to that is that you're still working. It's usually your job that interrupts that routine. I can't do that any longer. And now you have a one-person family working. And a lot of us can't do that any longer. So now what's happened is now you have one person that's working, that's trying to keep the house going, the car payments, all of the stuff, so that's really interfering. Whereas most of us are in their 70s. Most of us that are caregivers are going to be only 3 years apart from the person that we're caring for. So if you're in your 70s, your care partners have illnesses too. So there's two people that may have to deal with it. In my case, Albert was 22 years older than I was. I was still working. It still was detrimental. Still was detrimental. So it's a really, really hard thing to go through. You see such despair. You see all kinds of dynamics. But as Barry said, sometimes you can see the light through it too. And if we can get the help and the support, that's what I'm a promoter of. If we have services in our community, I want to use them as much as I possibly can so they don't disappear. In our community in Citrus County over the last 5 years, we've lost 100 beds in memory care. 2 assisted livings closed up and others have slowed down in their memory care because they don't have the skill and they don't train. They don't want to train them. So if I can tell you right now, if I took these two and some other people and say, you 20 are going to live together and get along, how do you think that's going to work? That's what we do in our memory cares. In our memory cares, we may have up to 30 people, and they're all supposed to get along. And we have no skilled staff to understand that he's a real bully.
Yeah.
He is.
So this wasn't so bad talking about dementia, was it?
No.
Okay.
Very good.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't Hospice of Marion County have a class where
Hospice of Marion County does.
you can dress up?
Hospice of Marion County, you have a lot of services here. In fact, I think Mark Croft is going to lead. He does classes at the top of the world, Master of the Possibilities, and he does support groups in Marion County Hospice. But his wife, who was in a skilled environment for many years, just passed away, and I think he's going to move back north. But what he's talking about is if you call, it's really actually called the Nancy Reinhardt Dementia Education. It's part of Marion County Hospice, but they got $100,000 from John Reinhardt in memory of his wife. and they're going to create an education. But what they're doing right now is a virtual dementia tour, where some of the things that I've just described to you is vision, comprehension. Now, comprehension is not hearing. He mentioned to me, Bob said he has hearing aids and he has a hard time or whatever it might be. Our folks don't necessarily have a hearing problem. Yes, they may, but what it is a comprehension. They're dropping every fourth word. So that makes it hard as you babble on them trying to understand. So they will put headphones on you. They'll put picky things in your feet, and they'll put gloves on you and make you do some tasks. They'll put you in some rooms, and that is mimicking a person with dementia. It's called the virtual dementia tour. It's very powerful. It's really, really something. If anybody wants that information, I'll be happy to send it to you. But it is definitely powerful.
Yeah,
Yes.
we want to find out what it's like to be have
Correct.
dementia. We
Correct.
Find out in a hurry.
Correct.
I was curious about the kind of dementia they say that Bruce Willis has.
Bruce Willis has a front temporal aphasia. Aphasia is I'm losing my verbal. Front temporal is this is what's damaged. Front temporal is your processing. He lost his language skills very early. My husband, Albert, had a fall on a bicycle. That lost his because of the left side. So and usually front temporal doesn't have memory loss right off the bat. His did because of the aphasia. So yes, that's what he has.
Do they usually progress quickly?
Some do and some don't. It just depends. When you were saying that what is the killer, what is the thing, it could be strokes. It could be any number of things that will take them. Your brain isn't working the same as it was. You know, you just don't realize the impact of what the brain is not capable of doing, what it shows here. And that's what's really happening. It's really sad to see Bruce Willis. And people knew that on his last movie. And they said that the staff and the other cast members really knew that on that last museum movie, he had very little verbal part in that. But they kept it a secret because of the respect that they had for him. But yes, we have people like Jack Hanna. We also have a photo exhibit that started out many years ago with only 24 photos. We have now 85. We can't keep up. Jack Hanna. You have Charles Bronson. You have Sidney Poitier that died. You have Barbara Walters. You have all these people. You have Sandra Day O'Connor. Sandra Day O'Connor is living with it now. Jack Hanna is living with it now. Tony Bennett, I think he just passed or so, didn't he? Right. So those are all part of our photo exhibit. So what I guess is what we're saying is that it has no boundaries. It doesn't care if you're white, black, purple. It doesn't care if you're Republican, Democrat. It doesn't care if you're Catholic or Protestant. It doesn't care if you're rich or poor. It has no boundaries. No boundaries. It'll affect everybody. So his is different depending on his age. He's still only in his 60s, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't know.
Yes, I lost a friend from that frontal.
It's all from the frontal temporal, right?
Very young.
Maybe that's why she's complete.
Lewy body is another very difficult dementia. It comes with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
Lewy body dementia was named after Dr. Lewy Body, just as Alzheimer's was. You know, Alzheimer's disease has been around here since 1906. The person that Dr. Alzheimer's found, the patient that found, she died before she was 55. So it hasn't been since about the 80s where we've actually done some real good research. So for some of you that are apprehensive about, oh my God, I'm going to get it. RenStar in Ocala, I partner with because of their education. You can call up RenStar and say, I want a free memory evaluation. And they'll probably spend about an hour with you, look at your medications. Because unfortunately, sometimes our medications can cause that cloudy, foggy feeling. It can give us the same types of things that looks like a dementia. But they will do different tests on you, give you the information, and you go back and you can tell your doctor. You may never have a form of dementia, but one of the things that they will do is if you want to get into a trial, they'll give you a PET scan and you'll be able to find out. So it's really beneficial. Somebody came to me, it was a friend of ours that said the neurologist told her she had a dementia. And they kept pushing the medications on her. And she's a real easygoing person. We said, just hold off on that for a little while, let's see what happens. And one of the research companies in Villages, which was Charter, was doing a study that they only took 2 blood draws and they would give you a PET scan. Some of them are medicated, some are not. So she went over there and got into the trial and found out that she was never going to have a form of dementia. So we're really glad that she didn't. So a lot of people will go and get those evaluations and have an understanding. Now you have a baseline. If something changes, go back. So that's another resource.
Is there any research being developed with your diet as far as this goes?
Well, if I tell you now to change your diet, is that going to do anything for you?
Well,
No.
You know Ben Carson?
No.
Dr. Ben Carson?
No, but the Mediterranean diet is probably one of the best diets that all of us can be on because there's a balance. But if and this is really funny, people will take food away from their person after they've been told they have a dementia. Hell, give it to them. I mean, they got a dementia, but this is the kind of stuff we should be talking to our grandkids about. Does diet play a role? Diet may not play a role in dementia, but it plays a role in all our other comorbidities of health. So, does that work? Yes, but we should be teaching. It's the same thing with how many people cooked with aluminum, Teflon, all of that. We have no significant. How many people, they said, started using curry and ginger and all that stuff because we found out that there was a little village in India that didn't get dementia. So we all started using curry. Well, we're not that ethnic background.
Now we all have ulcers.
And now we all have ulcers, so we really hated that curry. But yeah, so there isn't anything. This is the thing, when my partner and I started talking 10 years ago, there was only 75 types and forms of dementias under that umbrella. There's 125 now. So they're still not understanding what is causing this. They don't know. How many have heard of Premagen?
Oh, sure.
And when that Premagen came out, it was pretty easy to get. It was only about $20 a bottle. What's it now? Some people have said it's huh?
$2 a pill.
Right. And you're gonna pee it out. It doesn't, but it's the same thing. I will tell you that if your thyroid is off, one of the signs is if your some of the things that are medical conditions that can be checked is thyroid. That can throw everything off and you can look as though you have a dementia. Vitamin B, vitamin D. We saw a lot of people with a lack of vitamin D at the beginning of COVID because we weren't going outside. But as we age, we change our diet. Naturally, we change our diet and we eliminate some of those vitamins. Now, you can fill my body up with all those vitamins, but if I'm not deficient, what am I going to do with them?
You're going to eliminate them.
Right. So those are the things you want to do. You don't want to overload me. But Premagen is not. We don't have anything to stop the destruction of our brain. We have things that are behavior management, but not anything to stop the destruction. Now, some of the people that do take a Premagen, it's really funny. You've heard about the placebo in a study, right? The people in the placebo give them more feedback of how much they're better than the ones that are actually on the drug. So if I give you a Premagen and say this is going to make you feel better, what do you think he's going to feel? Better. The placebo. So if it works and you want to spend the money, go ahead, spend it. If that makes you. But after a while, what she said, the paranoia, you give somebody a handful of pills, you're trying to kill me.
Yeah.
So the most you can eliminate, yeah.
Have you ever taken prednisone?
Who?
Prednisone? Or prednisone? Well, you know,
Oh, the prednisone.
yeah.
Okay, yeah,
That
okay.
will improve everything you do.
Oh, absolutely. That is, and that is a miracle worker.
Yeah.
So does
Until
Jack
you gain about 35 pounds.
Yeah.
What?
So does Jack Daniels.
Sure. So did this answer some questions for you? I know was this a little bit lighter than what you thought as far as dementia? This is what, huh?
As far as the gun part.
What do you mean as far as the gun part?
It's like we gotta take everyone's guns away, that was, yeah.
Yeah, that's not what we're about. We're about watching and also communicating. The reason that I say our folks are still aware, you take a gun or you take something away from them, that's going to be the big focus of your time all day long.
Wow.
So you have to do things with them. I will tell you that John Deere equipment is the same way. I had a gentleman that loved his John Deere equipment. He had dementia, and he was using a chainsaw, and it fell and almost cut all his toes off. And his wife, all she kept doing was, we're going to have a garage sale and sell it. How does that make everybody feel? You know, get $2 off your gun or something, right? And he said, no, that ain't happening. I'm not doing that. So finally I talked to him and said, do you have any sons? And he said, I sure do. I said, well, I know how important your equipment is to you, and I'm sure you keep it up. He said, of course I do. I said, is it going to go to any of your sons, when you are not here any longer? He says, of course. And I said, would you think about maybe possibly talking to them now, and you could teach them how to use them, maintenance it, show them how they can keep it as long as you've had it. What I was doing was trying to give him a purpose and an option for him to have a voice in yes or no. And what he finally did was do that. His wife was so grateful because he was going out there trying to start all this stuff, and it was dangerous for him. So the same thing works for anything of a possession, because when you start to take that away from a person, I don't care if it's broken, how important will that come to that person?
Yep.
Yeah.
And everybody believes that what they have is worth way more than what it is, so you have to look at it that way. I don't want to take a voice away from a person living with dementia. I want to learn, and I want to learn who they were, because that's going to determine how I'm going to approach them. So who they were is how I'm going to build a relationship. And that's something that we forget a lot. We just want to do the act and think they're going to be okay. Doesn't work that way. So I really thank you for your time. I know I've probably taken up way too much.